Michael Smith is, in the best possible sense, a man of Leicestershire. From the late 18th century, Leicester and Leicestershire were renowned around the world for footwear, the manufacture of shoe machinery, the making of the shoes, and the selling of shoes. When Michael was growing up and going to school in Leicestershire and Rutland, and for much of the late 20th century, British high streets were lined with shoe shops with famous names, many of which, like Oliver's, Stead and Simpson, and Freeman Hardy Willis, either originated in Leicester or were owned by the Leicester-based British Shoe Corporation. On the surface, many of those names are now gone, but behind the scenes they and the Leicester tradition of footwear retailing live on, thanks to the entrepreneurship of Michael Smith and the business he created, Shoe Zone. Two themes can be identified in Michael's background. One was the footwear industry, the other a grasp of number and finance. Michael's grandfather was a shoe manufacturer who built up a shareholding in the BensonShoe business. Michael's father was an accountant who stimulated his interest in figures as a child with simple number games. After education at Neville Holt School and at Uppingham, Michael followed in his father's footsteps and qualified as an accountant. In his early years in the profession, which involved auditing many independent local shops, he developed an understanding of retail and harboured a distant dream of owning one or two shops himself. But he admits he did not envisage the path his career was subsequently to take. The dream started to become reality when Michael's grandfather's shareholdings in Benson's were combined by Michael and his brother Christopher. This gave them a significant share of that business, which they were able to acquire fully in 1980, bringing with it 48 shops. For the best part of the next 2 decades, Michael and Christopher built the business using a strategy of acquisition that saw them take over Wassell's, Tyler's, and then in 1996, the former Curtis Freeman Hardy Willis stores from British Shoe Corporation. Michael's son Anthony joined the business in 1993 and in 1997 took over as chief executive when Michael became its chairman. At this time, Michael's brother stepped away from the business to pursue other interests. Further acquisitions followed, including Oliver's and Stead and Simpson, which had operated in Leicester since 1853. Shoe Zones now has 500 stores throughout the UK, backed up, of course, by online sales capacity, and has over 4,000 employees. This 35-year period was one when many UK retailers were failing to cope with economic fluctuations, market innovation, and challenges from international competition. And the summary fails to give sufficient credit to Michael and his family for their vision, enterprise, powers of persuasion, when speaking to the bankers, and occasional willingness to take risks. Nor does it reflect an underlying business philosophy based on the simple objective of fairness and honesty to all, customers, employees, and suppliers. It is a story of the successful rescue of a number of failing shoe businesses and the saving of hundreds of jobs. This has rightly given Mr. Smith great satisfaction and would be sufficient in itself to justify his presence here today. But it is not the whole story. Michael acknowledges the influence which his experience of family life has had on him. His first wife, Anne, who died 30 years ago, felt strongly that they should adopt children less fortunate than their own. Their 3 adopted daughters, together with Michael's second wife, Frances, and other members of the family, are with us in the hall today. The experience of adoption and the love of family, the awareness that other children are far less fortunate, underlay the decision to establish the Shoe Zone Trust in 2005, with the principal aim of improvement in the lives of children. Grants worth over £1 million have been made in the 10 years since it was set up, supporting local and national causes, and indeed charities as far afield as the Philippines. Today, therefore, we gladly recognise the achievements of a local man whose long and successful career in the shoe business so much a part of our city's social and economic heritage, has been matched by a commitment to decency and generosity to others. Mr. Chancellor, on the recommendation of the Senate and the Council, I present Michael John Smith, that you may confer on him the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws.
What a story, what a terrific story you've got to tell. It's an absolute pleasure to give you this, it really is. And, we'll have a good chat later on today. You're up over there.
Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, graduating students, ladies and gentlemen. Many months ago, I received a letter from the university offering this doctorate to me. I read the letter, and I read it again, and I read it again. I couldn't believe it, so eventually plucked up courage to ring the university, suggesting they had got the wrong Michael Smith. They assured me that they had got the right Smith, and so I'm now here today. And after all these months, I still can't believe it. Naturally, I'm extremely honoured to accept this doctorate, having lived and worked in the city or county all of my life. There's no doubt that some recognition should go to my two sons, Charles and Anthony, who worked with me as the business expanded in the last 15 years, and indeed they have been running the business since I retired 2 years ago. I thank the orator for his very kind words and for the effort he has put into the description of my business and non-business life. I also thank various members of this university staff, including my host for today, for showing me around the university and advising me on the procedures for today. I make the assumption that most honorary degrees are awarded to men and women who attended university in their earlier years. I'm not one of those people. I left school at 18 and went straight into 5-year articles to qualify as an accountant. After a few weeks, I was paid the princely sum of £91 a year. In the case of those only a little older than me, their parents actually had to pay a premium for the privilege of articles. How times have changed. After I qualified, I joined my father, who was a director and shareholder in a fairly big national house building firm based in Wixton near Leicester. And I was appointed finance director soon afterwards. After 6 or 7 years, sadly at the time, we were taken over, but later I became the finance director of the much larger company. Throughout those 14 or so years, I learned a huge amount about business and the risks there are. And you will note that I shall be referring to risks a few times. From a business perspective, I saw some of the best times in the 1960s and the worst in the 1970s, a learning curve which has helped me enormously during my career. 35 years ago, as the orator has already mentioned, I became involved in shoe retailing. I really would love to tell you the background story of how I managed to move from the building industry to buying an unsuccessful small shoe retailer. It would take too long, and my family sitting up there would fall asleep as they've heard the story so many times before. Suffice it to say, the purchase of BensonShoe, as it was known then, was a huge risk. I borrowed all the money required for what was pretty well a blind bid. The company had 48 small shops, but I was only aware of a few in Leicester. I didn't find out where the other ones were until day one of owning the company. That is absolutely true. I knew nothing about shoes, and my sons will tell you that that's still the case. I believe that hard work, common sense, and some luck set the shoe business on the road to success. The most enjoyable highlights of my shoe career were negotiating to buy and then help turn round other shoe retailers who were struggling with either management or finance. All the companies we purchased, that the orator has already mentioned, were based in or near Leicester, with the exception of one small company based in Birmingham. The earlier purchases, the ones that we did earlier on in our lives, were companies much larger than us, which made the challenge particularly interesting. In all cases, there was a big risk, again, risk as you can imagine. One could usually see what the assets were, but the liabilities could easily not be apparent. I'm sure many of you who have done your course at the Leicester University will understand that. Away from business, the orator gave details of my family and in particular adopting children. And as he said, my first wife, Anne, and I wanted so much to help children, a child without parents. And again, of course, if you think about it, that was also very much a risk adopting children that we knew very little about, if anything. What a blessing it has turned out to be. The 3 children in question are here today, and they have children of their own, one of whom is my eldest grandson, now studying at university in Cardiff. And he sent me a text today, very kind of him, says what an amazing grandpa and how pleased he is for me and all the rest of it, what a wonderful award. But what was really cool about the whole thing was that I'd got the same doctorate as the chairman of the city, the Leicester City. And of course he is a Leicester City supporter. So maybe the guy this morning is probably more important than I am. I became involved as a trustee in the charity which had arranged 2 of the adoptions. This led eventually to my 2 sons becoming interested in helping the children's home in the Philippines from where my youngest daughter came. And this in turn led to Shoe Drone Trust being formed about 10 years ago. The Trust gives a lot of support to the Philippines home, as well as to a number of other organisations who give help to children and young people, and that is the objective of the Trust. And this Trust has paid out over £1 million in grants over the last 10 years. You may also be interested to know that the company itself, Shoe Zone, nothing to do with the Trust at all, has over many years arranged charity events encouraging the stores to do their bit. And over the last 3 years, they have raised £500,000 for children in need. And those of you in the UK will be aware of this charity as it fills our TV screens each autumn. And I would recommend any business to do their bit for charity. It clearly helps the recipients, that's obvious, but it is also enjoyable for the staff and for their morale, and good publicity for the business itself. On a regular basis, I made routine visits to stores, but they never knew when I was coming. On one particular occasion, I visited a store just after opening first thing in the morning to find just one person standing behind the till. I noticed she was wearing her pajamas and thought she had got straight out of bed to come to work. I was just about to reprimand her when I realised that it was our charity week, and I guessed that all staff would be coming in similarly dressed, which did in fact happen. I've tried in a few words to build on the orator's words about my life. I have mentioned risk a number of times. All of you will take risks with your working lives. You will make mistakes, as I have done on many occasions, and you must learn from them. So I have a few one-liners, not jokes, but tips. Challenge yourself. Do not accept mediocrity. Take up opportunities when they arise. Do take risks once you have assessed what they are likely to be. But above all, enjoy what you do. I enjoyed every day at work, even when things were sometimes very tough. Finally, I finish with congratulating all of you today, those of you who have graduated today. This is your day far more than it's mine, and I really should not be here. Having said that, I am enormously proud to now be part of this great university, as I am sure you are proud of what you have achieved. One thing I have particularly enjoyed today as a shoe man was sitting there, seeing you coming up. I didn't look at your faces, I looked at your feet. And I did notice, ladies, you have done your shopping very well. Some very interesting fashions. And guys, well, you've certainly polished them. Well done. I hope those of you who have been resident here in Leicester have enjoyed being in the city of Leicester. And perhaps some of you may have become fans of Leicester City or the Tigers. So good luck to you all, and thank you very much.